Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our way looking at the imperatives of the middle voice. Now, we've already seen the imperatives of the active, and we can remember that you had some complexity in the second singular, where you had the ending be either just the epsilon of the verb stem, or theta iota, or sigma. And we saw forms like that. And then the other endings were stable, to, te, and intone. Whereas if we turn to the middle, we see that all of the forms are stable, but that second singular form, sigma omicron, is going to be subject to the rule that sigma disappears between vowels. So that means that the epsilon of the present verb stem of an omega verb will cohere with the omicron, and thus your ending will be omicron upsilon, as we'll see. But otherwise, the endings are exactly, or very close, I should say, to those of the active, except you see the sigma theta in place of the tau, and then the plural third is stone, but that's not hard to relate to the third plural of the active. So if you write out these forms, say 20 times, they'll get into your head, and then you will not have much trouble recognizing them when you see them. So, looking at the present, as we said, the present imperative in its middle voice will, in the second person singular, be subject to that rule that sigma disappears between vowels. And then that leaves us with epsilon omicron, which the rule of contraction found at Smythe 51a tells us unites to omicron upsilon. So your present imperative of the second singular is lu-u in the middle. Lu-u. And then you get lu-esto, lu-este, and lu-eston, ignoring as I do the duals. Now, with Homer, there's the complication that he does not, he's happy to exist with open vowels, that is, to not do the contraction of the omicron, the epsilon omicron to u, omicron upsilon. So we're about to see, or we will see when we get to line 215 of Book 1 of the Iliad, that where Athena stops Achilles from killing Agamemnon on the spot, she says, and this is the second half of this line 215, su disco piteo demin. Okay, you, she's speaking to Achilles, get a grip, restrain yourself. Iskeo, remember the middle always refers to action that reflects on the person. So restrain yourself. Piteo demin, and be obedient, be obedient to us. And she says to us because she's come on behalf of Hera as well, as we will see. So here we have these two present imperatives in Homer that one has to get used to, where instead of looking at the omicron upsilon of the Attic form, which has done the contraction once sigma has disappeared, in Homer you will see this form of the epsilon omicron uncontracted. So su disco piteo demin. Again, this is a wonderful half line to write on a card and memorize as just a very good example of these imperative forms that you will see. So I put here the Smythe's entry in the index of verbs for the principal parts of echo because I wanted you to see that it's in a case like this where you have to look all the way to the end of this entry to see that the very last bit, that this isco, it's long, excuse me, isco, the iota is long, is a biform of echo from the, you see these sigmas has disappeared. Siseko became isco in the early forms of the language. So this biform here, this is just a good example of how much information there is inside of these Smyth's index of verbs. I've been dying to tell this story, so I will just tell it here. I was at a Latin speaking event a couple years ago, and it was because speaking Latin, conversational Latin, has become all the rage in high school teaching circles because it's less demanding than the literary approach, and you can keep your class full and make the administrators happy. Well, however, I'm talking to these Latinists about Greek, and at one point I said to one of them, well, you can't really read Greek unless you're very deeply familiar, with Smyth's index of verbs. And the person got all flustered. So, oh no, you don't have to know, Smyth's index of verbs back and forth to read Greek. You don't have to really know that to read Greek. And I just shook my head, didn't want to, get into a fight with the guy. But I thought to myself afterwards, well, you may not have to know it, but it sure does make it a lot easier. Okay, so your principal parts of verbs are just the Waterloo of your failed Greek student, the Napoleon who thinks he's going to rule again. No, you will be stopped short, if you do not devote yourself to the principal parts of the verbs of Greek. So I just encourage people to do that. So we see here as well in this display of the various forms that you have these second aorist imperatives, and in the active you have skes, so you see the sigma of the active of those certain active forms, and in the middle you have sku, but note the accent over the upsilon of sku that marks it out as a second aorist imperative. So, like I say, there's a wealth of information to be found in these entries in Smyth's index of verbs at the back of Smyth, and you should never tire of revisiting these when you visit even what seems like a familiar verb, because there will always be surprises and reminders. Okay, so kai pota toi tris tosa par esetai agla adora hubrios henekates de su diskeo peteo de main. Okay, we'll get to that in a little bit. So going forward, to look at the first aorist imperative in the middle voice, we see that this one throws you a real curveball because lucai, this second person singular middle imperative of the first aorist, is actually identical to the infinitive of the first aorist active. So that's a real curveball, and it's quite difficult to keep these straight, and you will be stopped in your tracks when you first see these on your own. Of course, I'll tell you what they are, but if you're reading on your own, it's hard to sort out and can be confusing, this identity of forms. But nevertheless, once you get out of the second singular, you see that lu sas do, lu sas te, lu sas ton. These are pretty easy to spot and identify. But again, if you look at the plural second singular, it's identical to the indicative form, except without the augment. Okay, and so the second aorist imperative, like we just saw a second ago, we have li pu, with the accent over the upsilon. Lipesto, lipeste, lipestone. And so these, again, are pretty straightforward. And then when you come to the contract, the middle of the contract verbs, remember, temao, poieo, de loo, are our contracts. We come into some of the rules of contraction because, and here our main problems are, again, with the second singular, where you see the way Smythe presents it. He always puts to the left of the actual form, the fully contracted form that you'd see in a good Attic writer. He always puts next to it display of what has happened, the vowels that have become contracted. So in the case of Timo, he shows that that's from Timau, but we can further analyze that by remembering that sigma has disappeared between the epsilon and the omicron. And so you have alpha plus epsilon omicron, and epsilon omicron, what does that, epsilon plus omicron, what does that become? That equals omicron upsilon. So finally, in the third stage of evolution, you get what Smythe has actually displayed, the alpha plus the omicron upsilon. So he simplified things a bit, and again, these rules of contraction are just something you have to buckle down and study closely when you get to the point of wanting to read Attic. They're less important than Herodotus and Homer because they don't always contract their vowels. They're happy with open forms, but nevertheless. So that's what's going on here with Timo, omega with the circumflex, is that we have this contraction of alpha, omicron, upsilon. And then in poieu, we have that contract to poieu, because the epsilon, again, plus epsilon omicron equals epsilon plus omicron upsilon, and that all contracts to omicron upsilon with that circumflex there. And then likewise with de la u, that has contracted from de la eo become da la u, and all of that contracts to omicron upsilon with the circumflex over the upsilon. So those forms are a little troublesome, but then after that, in dealing with Tamao, you just have the alpha and the epsilon. The alpha is a stronger vowel, so it overpowers the epsilon, and so you just have long alpha, long alpha, long alpha all the way through. So those forms are not that troublesome. And then with poieo, the epsilon and epsilon come together to form epsilon iota. So poiesto, poieste, poieston. And then for de loo, you just have the omicron upsilon all the way through. De lusto, de luste, de luston. So, that's it just is what it is. But looking at these imperative forms of these contract verbs, it's kind of a good entry point for the study, the concepts of contract verbs, which, like I say, just need to be studied on their own. Okay, so finally, we're going to look at just the first aorist passive imperatives. These are very, very rare, but they do exist. So you have lu te te, you're saying to someone, be released. Lu te to, you're saying to a third person, singular, let him be released. Let that prisoner be released. And then lu te te, let you all be released. And then finally lu ten tone, let them be released. So again, these are pretty easily recognizable with the curveball being thrown as usual by the second person singular, where I would imagine that this tau iota. It's the theta iota that just has softened after because they don't want to duplicate the aspirated forms of the consonants. I would imagine that's what's going on, though I'm not sure. But anyways, they're just for completion's sake. You'll very rarely see one, a passive imperative, but nevertheless, the forms do exist in the scheme of things. Okay, so there you go. The middle and the passive imperatives. Good luck with your Greek. Don't be discouraged, especially by the little contract verbs and stuff. Keep working hard, and we'll be back to read some more Homer very soon. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.